Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah here. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Beis and Mitzvah Hashem. Today we will be learning Daf Pei Amid Aleph and we will be completing Siman Kuf Ayin Zayin. So before we begin our learning today, our learning should be a schus for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael, Hanusunu Batsaru Bashivya, Ha'imdim Bein Bayam Bein Bayabasha, Hamakayim Yerachem Aleihem V'Yetziim Yitzar L'Rvacha Me'afela La'ira Umishibud L'Geula Hashta Bagolo Zman Kariv and Amar Amen. Our learning should be a schusser for Shalema for our real Yosef ben Miriam Rezel and Meir ben Chai Sarah. They should have a refuah Shalema B'Seich Shar Chayle Yisrael. So we pick up today on Pei Amid Aleph, Siman Kuf Ayin Zayin Sif Gimel, the end of the top line on Pei Amid Aleph. Now, if we go back to Sif Aleph in this Siman, we had been discussing Dvarim Habayim B'Seich seudah. So you washed Netilas Yadayim, you made HaMotzie on Pas, and now, of course, bread is not the only food that you're going to eat during the meal. So you have other Dvarim Habayim Machmas seudah. You have other foods coming now, other Dvarim Habayim B'Seich seudah. You have other foods now coming to you during the seudah. Do you need to make brachas on these foods, or do you not need to make brachas on these foods? So then we differentiated between Dvarim Habayim Machmas seudah, foods that really come as part of the seudah. These are the foods that we call their boim lalafes es hapas. They come to accompany the bread, which we saw all the way at the beginning of the Siman. In the very first Bir Halacha in this Siman, Bir Halacha Dibra Maschil, Lalafes Bahem Es HaPas, we saw that it doesn't necessarily mean that you're mamish going to eat these foods together with bread. It means foods that come as bona fide seudah foods together with the bread. There's no expectation that the entire seudah is going to be bread. We know that you're going to eat bread, and then you're going to have an entree. You're going to have a main dish of basar, meat, dagim, fish, beitzim, eggs. You're going to eat other seudah foods. But there are foods that are called ba'im machmas seudah. Those are bona fide seudah foods that you eat l'svia, you eat them to satiate yourself, you eat them for mazain. These are called ba'im machmas seudah. They're called seudah foods. They're also called foods that come lalafes bayas hapas, meaning that they come to accompany the bread, not that you eat them simultaneously with the bread, but they come to accompany the bread to make up the seudah. So, if you're eating dvarim habayim machmas seudah, toich seudah, those do not need a separate bracha rishona, nor do they need a separate bracha achrona. Why not? So we explained, based on what we saw in the Mishnah Berurah and together with what we saw in the Aruch HaShulchan, we saw that there are two kind of different mechanisms that pater the Dvarim Habayim Machmas seudah from needing their own bracha rishona. One is the tried and true mechanic of Iker v'Tafel. We know that it's a basic law, a basic halacha, brachas 101, is that when you have an Iker and a Tafel, you make the bracha on the Iker and you pater the Tafel. A very classic example that I like to use of this is if somebody sits down to eat a bowl of raisin bran for breakfast. There are raisins in there. A raisin is a bari priya eitz, but when you eat a bowl of raisin bran, you do not make a bari priya eitz. You make a bari mina mezainos. Why? Because the cereal, the mezainos component of the cereal, is the Iker. The raisins are a Tafel. So guess what? When you eat a bowl of raisin bran, you end up eating raisins without making a bari priya eitz. How is that? Because it's covered by the bracha of HaMotzie. Why is it covered by the bracha of HaMotzie? Because Iker and Tafel. You have the Iker is the mezainos. You made, not HaMotzie, I'm sorry, I said HaMotzie, I meant mezainos. You made a bracha on the Iker. You made a mezainos on the cereal. So you made a bracha on the Iker. And when you made the mezainos on the Iker, you patered the Tafel. You patered, with that mezainos, you actually patered the raisins. Now we're going to see later in today's share that in this mechanism, of Iker and Tafel, there is also a machlokes haposkim exactly how it works. Because you could kind of look at this in two different ways. You could say that when I made the mezainos on the cereal component of my raisin bran, somehow that mezainos becomes the bracha rishona on the raisins. So did I eat the raisins without a bracha rishona? No, chas v'chalila. Kol hanenem ha'olam hazeh b'lo bracha. It's like he's geisel me'akadosh baruch hu miYisrael. So don't tell me that I ate my raisins without a bracha. No, I made a bracha. Where did I make a bracha? I made a mezainos. How does a mezainos end up being a bracha on a raisin? Because of Iker and Tafel. Since the raisin is a Tafel to the mezainos, guess what? In this case, the bracha on the raisin became a mezainos. So I pottered the raisin with the mezainos. That's one way you could look at it. The other way that some poskim want to suggest is very, very different. They say that when there's an Iker and a Tafel, when there's raisin bran, so there's bran flakes that are a mezainos, and there are raisins, so the cereal component is the Iker, the raisin is the Tafel, it's as if the raisin is bottled to the cereal. It's as if the raisin's not there. And since the raisin's not there, it doesn't need a bracha. It's not pshat that you're eating raisins without a bracha. Halachically, we look at it as if you're not eating raisins. You're eating cereal. That's what you're eating. There are raisins mixed in that are bottled. It's as if they're not here. In the context of Hilchas Brachas, it's as if they're not there and they don't require a bracha. But whatever it is, this is the mechanism of Iker and Tafel. So one way we could have a bracha of hamotzi on pas, pater all other dvarim habayim machmas seudah, is through Iker and Tafel. What we do is we say that you made hamotzi, the bread, the lechem, the pas, is the Iker of the seudah, and when you made hamotzi on the pas, you patered everything that's Tafel to the pas. Then we saw there's another mechanism. The Mishnah Berurah brought down the big suffix of the Magen Avram, where the Magen Avram said, but what do you do if it's very clear that the pas is not the Iker of the seudah? What do you do if somebody's sitting down to eat a seudah and he doesn't even really want to eat the pas? The only reason he's washing and making hamotzi on lechem is because he doesn't want to have 50 shilos in Hilchas Brachas. So he mamish says, you know what, I'm going to wash and I'm going to eat a little bread in order to pater everything from a bracha. And then I'm going to eat my tomahawk steak and my spicy fries. So clearly, the pas is not the Iker. So the Magen Avram wanted to know, what do you do in that case? The Mishnah Berurah said, okay, that generates a suffix. Really, we shouldn't do that. The Aruch HaShulchan said it's fine. No problem. Why, explained the Aruch HaShulchan? He said because there's a second mechanism. What's the second mechanism? The second mechanism is not Iker and Tafel. The second mechanism is a very big chiddush, and that is, you thought the bracha of hamotzi lechem min haaretz only covers bread, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Guess what? It doesn't. Says the Aruch HaShulchan, the bracha of hamotzi covers all the dvarim habayim machmas seudah b'soich seudah. Since bread is something that you eat for svia and for mazain, and the tomahawk steak and the spicy fries and the string beans almondine and the mashed potatoes and the potato kugel and the loksha kugel are also all foods that come for svia and mazain, the hamotzi on the bread covers those foods as well. That's not Iker and Tafel. This is a different mechanism. It's that the bracha of hamotzi actually covers those foods. So, with all this, what we opened up the Siman with is this idea that everybody is very familiar with, and that is that you sit down to a seudah and you're going to wash. You wash, you make hamotzi on your pas, you eat your pas. For the most part, you don't have to make brachas rishonos on what you're going to eat for the rest of the meal, so long as they are dvarim habayim machmas seudah. But what if you're eating foods during the meal that are not ba'im machmas seudah? What if you're also eating foods during the meal that are not eaten for sevia? They're not eaten to satiate yourself. They're not really eaten for mazain. Why are they eaten? They're eaten for kinuach. What's kinuach? Kinuach is to put a pleasant taste in your mouth, to refresh to refresh yourself. That's not mazain and svia. So those are foods that are not ba machmas seudah. They're not seudah foods. The example given by the Mechaber in Sif Aleph, the example given was peiros, te'enim, figs, anavim, grapes. So you're eating fruit. You're eating an apple in the middle of the seudah. That's not ba machmas seudah. That's ba shaloi machmas seudah. Oh, says the Mechaber, you're eating dvarim that are not ba machmas seudah, toich seudah. They need their own bracha rishona. You must make a berachah on this fruit. You want to eat an apple during the meal, it's not covered by your hamotzi. It's not covered through the mechanism of ikar and tuffle, because you can't say that it's a tuffle to the bread. Why not? Certainly the bread is much more of an ikar than the apple is. Yeah, but in the words of the Mishnah Berurah, I always say the Mishnah Berurah, the Chafetz Chaim, he was so careful with his speech. He chose his words so carefully. The Mishnah Berurah says in Ois Kot Leches and Ayin Tes Amud Beis, he says no, not that Mishnah Berurah. He says in Mishnah Berurah, he's cutting Dalid and Ayin Tes Amud Aleph. He says, you know why peiros are not covered by hamotzi? You know why dvarim habayim shaloi machmas seudah are not covered by hamotzi? Kevan she'ein shayachim lepas. They're not shaykh to the pas. They have nothing to do with the pas. You see, when it comes to ikar and tuffle, the ikar and the tuffle have a relationship. When we say that by raisin bran, the cereal component of the dish is the ikar and the raisin is the tuffle, guess what? It's raisin bran. There's a relationship between the raisin and the bran, between the mezainis component of the food and the berachah component, the raisin component of the food. But one is the ikar and one is the tuffle. Says the Mishnah Berurah, when you're eating dvarim haboim sheloi machmas seudah, what happens is, it's like you look at this picture and you say, tomahawk steak, spicy fries, mashed potatoes, potato kugel, apple. Which one doesn't belong? The answer is apple. Apple doesn't belong. It's not shaykh to the pas. It's not a tuffle. It pashut doesn't belong here. It has no relationship to the pas. So you can't pater it with ikar and tuffle, nor can you pater it with the mechanism of the Aruch HaShulchan by turning around and saying that it's covered by the bracha of hamotzi. Why? Because this didn't come from mazain and svia. It doesn't come to satiate and for mazain. It comes like kinuach ba'alma. So you're going to eat an apple during the seudah, even though you washed, you're going to have to make a berachah. That's what comes out from the Mechaber over here and from the Mishnah Berurah. Okay, then the Mechaber gave us kind of a workaround, which the Mishnah Berurah let us know it's not really a workaround. The Mechaber, according to the Mishnah Berurah, the Mechaber tells us, what if you're having an apple during the seudah and it really didn't come for kinuach? It really came as part of everything else, lelafis bayes hapas. But since it's peiros, the default position is that it's dvarim habarim shaloi machmas seudah. So the Mechaber said you could elevate the peiros to be considered ba machmas seudah. How do you do that? Well, what you do is you take a slice of apple with a piece of bread and you eat it together. And you also have in mind that this is not a one-shot deal. It's not that I'm going to eat one slice of apple with bread. I'm eating one slice of apple with bread, then I'm going to continue eating the apple. But before I finish the apple, I'm going to have another piece of apple. At the end of the apple, I'm going to have another piece of apple with bread. So now you're eating the apple together with the bread. So the slice of apple that you eat mamish together with the bread for sure doesn't need a bracha rishona because you're eating it with bread. If you're eating it with bread, now it's ikar and tuffle. Now it is related to the bread because you're mamish eating it with the bread. So then ikar and tuffle, you definitely don't need a bracha rishona. But even the slices of apple that you eat without the bread, the slices of apple that you eat between the first slice of apple that you ate with the bread and the last slice of apple that you eat with the bread, Those middle ones that you eat without bread, they also don't need a bracha rishona. Why? Because since it really came lalafis bayas apas, and you started the eating and you're ending the eating together with bread, it's elevated to become dvarim habar machmas seudah, and it's covered by hamotzi. That's what the Mechaber told us in the end of Sif Aleph. The Mishnah Berurah on Ayin Tesam with Beis in Ois Katan Yud, he doesn't really like it. He brings down from the Achronim, really not a good idea. You really shouldn't do this. Really, you want to eat the apple during the seudah, what you really should do is take a piece of apple without bread, make a berachah eitz, and cover the rest of it, the rest of the apple that you're going to eat with your berachah eitz. Okay. So all of this was a recap of what we saw previously. And now we pick up with Sif Gimel on the top, the end of the top line of Pei and Aleph, where we're going to continue with this question of eating peiros, eating dvarim abarim shaloi machmas seudah, toich seudah. Says the Mechaber. Ve'im kaivei liftan sudasei ala peiros. What if you're having a peiros tish? What if it's Tu B'Shvat, and you decided that tonight for supper we are eating exotic peiros? That's what's for supper tonight. Not chicken, not meatballs, not that's, you know what is for supper tonight? For supper tonight, we have a beautiful fruit platter. That's what we have for supper tonight. That's what it means over here. Im kaveya liftan sudasa ala peiros. You decided that you're going to be kaveya seudah on peiros. So you wash the tils yadayim, you go and you make hamotzi, and you eat pas, and now what you're going to have for your seudah is fruit. Okay, says the Mechaber, im kaveya liftan sudasa ala peiros, if you're mamish kaveya seudah on fruit, havalei peiros kidvar mabar makmas seudah. So okay, so you have gone ahead and you have made your kviya seudah on peiros. You decided that your seudah today is peiros. So now the fruit has been elevated to dvar mabar makmas seudah. Va'afilu im oichel mea peiros b'tchilu sudase b'loi pas. And now, even if you begin the eating of the fruit without bread, what does that mean? That means that you washed, you came, you made a motzi, you ate bread. Let's say you ate a kazayis of bread, and now you dig into your fruit platter. But you started eating the fruit without bread. You're not eating any of the fruit together with bread. You started right away eating your fruit without bread. The first opinion the Mechaber brings down, which is the opinion of the Torah in the name of the Rosh, is that this fruit does not need a bracha rishona. Why doesn't it need a bracha rishona? Because you decided to be kaveh seudah ala pas. You decided that for your meal on this Tuesday night, your dvarim habayim machmas seudah is apples and kumquats and pineapples and dragon fruit. So, okay, it might be weird, it might be strange, but you decided to be kaveh seudah ala pas. So for this seudah, the peiros are dvar mabar machmas seudah. If they're dvar mabar machmas seudah, they're covered by a motzi. Okay, now there's a very, very important bir halacha over here, where the bir halacha brings down from the Torah. It's the first bir halacha on this sif, bir halacha dibra maskil va'afilu oichel mea peiros. The Mechaber said, you do not need to make a berachah eitz on these fruits, even if you start eating the fruit without bread. Jumps in the Chavetz Chaim and he says, Roitza loimer ma'at. That's only true if you eat a little bit of fruit without eating bread. Seems that what the Chavetz Chaim is saying in the name of the Torah is like this. If you wash and you make a motzi and you eat pas, and then you chow down on the fruit platter, and you eat a delicious orange, and then you eat a bunch of grapes, and then you eat an apple, and then you eat a very delicious, soft, sweet pear, and you're not eating any bread. So you eat a lot of fruit without eating any bread, then we can't call the peiros dvarim habar machmas seudah. What's at work over here is there is a halachic prejudice that we have to recognize. The halacha is prejudiced against making peiros devarim abar machmas seudah. And therefore, even in this case of Sif Gimel, where you decided to be kaveya seudah on peiros, and you decided that tonight's meal, the peiros are going to be the ikar of the seudah, so you want to elevate the peiros to become dvarim abar machmas seudah, the halacha is still prejudiced against that idea. And therefore, if you start the meal and your mom is chowing down on peiros without eating any bread together with the peiros, then the halacha is not going to let you call it dvarim abar machmas seudah, and you're going to have to make a bar priyates. But if what you do is you wash, you make a hamotzie, you eat a kazayis of pas, and then you eat 2 slices of apple, and then you go and you take some grapes and you eat it together with bread, then okay. Then we could elevate the peiros to dvarim abar machmas seudah, and we could say that it doesn't require a bracha. But in any case, this is only the first opinion that the Mechaber brings. Right away, you see 3 lines down in the Mechaber by the Oiskat Tezayin for the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah says, the Mechaber says, v'yesh cholkin. There are those who disagree with this completely, and he brings this down from the Smag that goes Maimoni. There are those that disagree with this Torah very strongly, and they say, no. Even if you're kaveya seudah on peiros, we're still not going to make peiros dvarim haboyim machmas seudah. We're still not going to make them a tafel to pass. We're still not going to say that some of the bracha of hamotzie covers them. They don't like this idea. But let's see the Mishnah Berurah first. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut in tezvav. Im kaveya. What does that mean? Says the Chavetz Chaim B'tzayin Loimar. What the Mechaber wants to say is shekviya sudasei lelafis hapas hayarak elu peiros. This Tuesday night meal, somebody decided supper tonight is a fruit platter. So the only thing he's eating together with the bread tonight is peiros. Valkain. And therefore, nechshavim kishar dvarim on niskar b'le'el b'sef aleph. So now you've elevated these peiros to dvarim haboyim machmas seudah, because that's what you're making your seudah out of. Ois cotton tezayin, but v'yesh cholkin. We have the Agos HaMaimoni and the Smag that disagree. Severe lahu, they hold. Nevertheless, if you're eating the fruit without bread, if you're starting to eat the fruit without bread, einam nasim tafel seudah, they can't become a tafel to the pas. And you have to make a bracha rishona on this pas. So the Smag, the Agos Maimoni, they don't go for this idea that somehow peiros could be elevated to dvarim abar machmas seudah. Now there is an interesting Dirshu footnote here, Dirshu footnote number 23, which it speaks to me. Already for a number of years, I really don't eat dairy, but back in the day when I was able to eat dairy and it agreed with me, one of my favorite dairy foods was a sliced up banana with sour cream. And I would eat it teicha seudah. That would be one of the courses of a lunch meal. Could be a banana with sour cream. So that is peiros, which are dvarim abayim shaloi machmas seudah. And I made it davar haba machmas seudah. I mixed it together with sour cream, which is a dairy. I made a dish out of it, and I elevated this fruit dish to be dvarim abar machmas seudah. In Dirshu footnote number 3, in the second paragraph, they bring down over here, Umisha oichel banana beseudah b'loi pas. If you eat a banana in the middle of the seudah without bread, v'hi loi kechelik mi'ikar seudah, and to you it's really a main part of your meal. Huva b'dina v'hanhagos, it's brought down in the Sefer Dina v'hanhagos from the Chazon Ish, shah Chazon Ish loi berachah, that the Chazon Ish did that. He ate a banana in the middle of the seudah and he didn't make a bracha. Ubir she'asikein mishum she'banana zu ha'isa ikar seudasai. And they bring down that the Chazon Ish said that the banana was the ikar, or at least one of the ikar parts of his meal. So he elevated it to dvarim abar machmas seudah, and he didn't make a bracha rishon on it. Okay, continues the Mechaber. So the Mechaber said 3 lines down near the end of the line, he said v'yesh cholkin v'lochein. Okay, so the Mechaber brought down 2 shitas here. The Mechaber brought down the first shita that if you're kaveh seudah on Paris, you make the Paris dvarim abar machmas seudah, and you don't have to make a berachah rishayna on them. But then he brought down a yesh cholkin. So what do? So says the mechaber v'lachein, therefore, toiv, it would be proper, sheyoichal betchila me'aperos impas. Be careful that even if you decided to be kaveh seudah on a fruit platter, right away at the beginning, when you start eating fruit, eat the fruit together with the bread. You don't have to eat all the fruit together with the bread, but start off the meal eating fruit from the fruit platter together with the bread. And the Bir Halacha, in Bir Halacha, Dibra Maskal Toiv Sheyoichal Betchila Me'aperos, he says, Ein Reitz Alom Sheyitoim Ma'at Min Hapas. This doesn't mean, taste a little bit of bread together with the apple and then you yoitza. No. The haloi ikar atam sheyuchalek ala peres b'li bracha afki shaloi achal oid impas k'may shkasav Rama hu misham dekava seudah alein ubetima ba'alma lo mikri kviya seudah. The Bir Halacha is saying, the Chavetz Chaim is saying in the Bir Halacha, what the Mechaber is telling you is, since we have this machlokes, on the one hand the Torah, on the other hand the Smag and the Gas Maimoni, he's saying, if you want to elevate the Peros to become Dvar Mabar Machmas HaSeudah, make sure that when you start the seudah, you eat a considerable amount of the Peros, or at least a significant amount of the Peros together with bread. That will elevate all the rest of the Peros to eat for the rest of the meal to Dvar Mabar Machmas HaSeudah. You don't have to end the fruit platter together with bread, like we saw yesterday. Yesterday we saw that if you have fruit in the middle of the meal and you want to elevate it to Dvar Mabar Machmas HaSeudah, you need to start and finish with bread. Over here, where you're being mamish kaveh seudah on Paris, over here the Mechaber is telling me to be yoitza all the days, at least start the fruit together with bread. But you don't have to finish the fruit together with bread. And the Chavetz Chaim in the Bir Halacha says, when the Mechaber says start the fruit together with bread, it means eat a significant amount of the fruit together with bread, not just te'ima ba'alma, not just a little taste of the bread. So that's what the Mechaber says here. V'lachein toiv sheyoichal betchila me'aperos impas. V'oz, and then, once you start eating the fruit together with bread, even if then you continue eating the fruit without bread, einam tun in bracha klal, the fruit does not require a bracha. Haggah says the Ramah, and the Ramah agrees with the Ramah. The Ramah agrees with the Mechaber. He's coming to be mefarish the Mechaber. Haggah, even if you don't finish the fruit on the fruit platter together with pas, since you were kaveh seudah on the Paris and you started eating the Paris together with bread, you're good, and you don't have to make a berachah rishayna on any of the fruit. Says the Mishnah Berurah, cut Yud Zayin, va'af al pi, even though you're not going to end the fruit together with bread, since you were kaveh seudah on the Paris, you're okay. Even though in Sif Aleph we saw that if you want to elevate Paris to Dvar Mabar Machmas HaSeudah, you have to start and finish eating the Paris together with bread. That was over there in Sif Aleph. In Sif Aleph, you weren't kaveh seudah on the Paris. In Sif Aleph, you were kaveh seudah on the tomahawk steak and the spicy fries and the bread. Grada, they brought you fruit also as part of the Lalafis Bayas Hapas, but you weren't kaveh seudah on it. So over there, if you want to elevate it to become Dvar Mabar Machmas HaSeudah, you need to start eating the fruit and finish eating the fruit together with bread. But not so over here. Over here, you were kaveh seudah on the Paris. If you're kaveh seudah on the Paris, even to be yaitza all the days, even to cover the smag and Haggah's Maimoni, you only need to start eating the fruit together with pas. You don't need to finish eating the fruit together with pas. So again, Mishnah Berurah is cutting Yud Zayin, Ritzayin Eloymar. Da'afta b'Sif Aleph armina sheyochel pas dafka gam l'b'seif. Even though in Sif Aleph we said you need to finish eating the fruit together with pas, bazeh, over here in Sif Gimel, she'ikar kviyah sudasa mitchila ha'yirak alel Paris, over here where you were mamish kaveh seudah on a fruit platter, that's tonight's supper is a fruit platter. then everybody would agree that you could eat the rest of the fruit without a bracha rishona, even though you're not going to eat any of the fruit anymore together with pas. Okay, now, that finishes Siv Gimel. Let me just tell you right now, if you're getting a little bit lost with all of these details on when does the fruit need a bracha rishona, when does the fruit not need a bracha rishona, the Mishnah Berurah is going to give a very beautiful synopsis at the end of the Siman, but in the meantime, let's go weiter, let's go to Sif Daled. Says the Mechaber Sif Daled. So we have now a few different cases where we're saying that if you have fruit during a meal, you do not have to make a separate bracha rishona on the fruit. So for example, let's say you're having your bread, your tomahawk steak, and your spicy fries, and an apple, and the apple somehow, you're in this strange restaurant, and they believe in serving apples not l'kinuach, but as part of the meal. It's not coming l'kinuach, it's coming more because of the seudah. So he said that in that case, what you could do, the Mechaber said, is eat a little bit of the apple together with bread, then you could continue eating the rest of the apple without bread, and then at the end, eat the last bit of apple together with bread, and you're good. So in that case, you're eating an apple, toicha seudah, and you're not making a bar priyates. Then we have Siv Gimel. In Siv Gimel, you're mamish being kaveh seudah ala peris. If you're being kaveh seudah ala peris, you don't make a bracha on the peris, because you were kaveh seudah ala peris. The Mechaber said, take the first bite, take the first significant amount of the peris together with bread. But again, you're going to end up eating the peris without a bracha. In all of these cases, says the Mechaber in Sif Daled, even if the fruit was not on the table when you made the hamotzi on the pas, since in all of these cases where I'm telling you could get away with eating the peris without making a bracha, that means that we're considering these peris to be dvarim aboy machmas hasuda, the lalafes pemes hapas, einam tunim bracha klal, they don't require a bracha. What's the big chiddush of Sif Daled? The big chiddush of Sif Daled is, we're going to see a halacha later on, Bezos Hashem Yisparach and Siman Reish Vav, we're going to see that when you make a bracha rishona on something, and then they bring you more of that min, you don't have to make another bracha. So for example, if you make a bar priyates on an apple, and the only fruit on the table is an apple, and then later they bring grapes, you don't have to make another bar priyates. Even though you didn't know that the grapes were coming, you didn't intend on eating grapes, but you made a bar priyates on the apple, the bar priyates on the apple is going to cover the grapes as well. But there are other times that you do have to make another bracha. For example, let's say you made a shahakal on beer. I'm just trying to remember the example that's given over there. I'll get the accurate example. Let's say you made a bracha rishona, you made a shahakal on beer. Let's see over here. Yeah. Let's say you made, the case that's given over there is, let's say you made a shahakal on a piece of fish. So you had a nice piece of salmon, and you made a shahakal on the salmon. And then they brought you beer. They brought you a drink of beer. Says the Mishnah Berurah, even though the salmon and the beer are both a shahakal, if you sat down, you didn't have a drink, you sat down by the table, they gave you a nice piece of salmon, you made a shahakal, you started eating salmon. Now they said, you thirsty? I'll bring you a drink. And they brought you a bottle of beer. You have to make a shahakal on the beer. Unless you had das when you made the shakal on the salmon, that I want to potter a drink that they bring me also. Or if the beer was on the table. If the beer was on the table, you pottered the beer. But so it's not always a given that the berachah on one thing is going to pater the berachah on something else, even if they happen to be the same berachah. What the Mishnah Berurah is saying over here is, what the Mechaber is saying in Sif Dalet is, we have seen now a chiddush. We have seen a chiddush whereby peiros, which are normally by default, and we said there's a heavy halachic prejudice, where by default we consider peiros to be devarim habayim sheloi machmas seudah. Yet we have seen that they could be elevated to dvarim habar machmas seudah, and you don't need a bracha. But you might think that maybe that only works if the peiros were at least on the table when you made the hamotzi, or you knew that the peiros were coming. Says the Mechaber, no. Even if the peiros were not on the table when you made the hamotzi. Since we are paskening lahalacha, that we're elevating them to dvarim habar machmas seudah, einam tu'unim bracha klal. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah cutting Yudches. Shaloi hayu, va'afil loi hayu gam ke daite aleim beferish. You didn't have das beferish that you're going to be eating this apple. It's still covered and it doesn't need a bracha rishayna. The kevin shekevei atzmai la'achila, because since you sat down and you would kavei yourself to eat a seudah, harei min hastam daite al kamashi yaviu loi. Your stam das is whatever they're going to bring you as dvarim habar machmas seudah, and you're covered. This is a very mechudesh tika Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah says over here, when is this true? Pirish l'masha oichel im hapas. Well, no, this is not. I'm sorry. This is fine. The Mishnah Berurah says, Pirish l'masha oichel im hapas, l'masha oichel b'loi pas, dispar b'si'ifam ha'koidmim. All the Mishnah Berurah is saying over here in Sif Kat Yutes is, Sif Dalet is a catch-all, like I explained at the beginning of the Sif. All of the different cases that we have learned in the previous Seifim, where you're going to end up eating peiros without making a bar priya eitz, toich, which could be fruit that you ate together with bread, or it could also be, in certain cases, fruit that you ate not together with bread. That's all he's saying. Okay, now we move along to Sif Hey, the final Sif of this very complex and very fascinating Siman. Says the Mechaber. Im achar shebirech alapas, you washed netilas yadayim, you made hamotzi, you ate some challah, and now you figure you're covered for the rest of the meal. Im achar shebirech alapas, if after you made the hamotzi, sholchu loy mi beis acherim, they sent you from somebody else's house, she'enoi samach aleim, a house that you don't rely on to get food from. And you didn't dream that you're going to be getting food from them. So you just got a basket of food that it wasn't here when you made the berachah hamotzi. It wasn't on your mind when you made the berachah hamotzi. You didn't have a dream that it was going to come. Says the Mechaber, even if it's dvarim habar machmas seudah, they brought you 6 slices of a minute steak roast. They brought you roasted potatoes. They brought you a beautiful potato kugel. So these are dvarim habar machmas seudah that are always covered by a hamotzi, and they never require their own bracha rishayna once you made a hamotzi. But in this case, you had absolutely no expectation that this was going to come, and certainly it wasn't here when you made the bracha. So the Mechaber says, "Afilu midvarim shadaket love and lafis esapas." You need to make a bracha rishayna on these foods. Why? Kedin nimlach. Because it's the same din as if you changed your mind. What does that mean? It means when you're nimlach, right? We've used this term many times already over here in Hilchas Dvar Manoyegim Besuda. When you knew you made a bracha al das that you're drinking 1 glass of water, and then you completely changed your mind and decided you want to have another glass. Not that you had stam das, I'm going to drink whatever I want to drink. No, you're very ois gecheshment with your food and your drink. You're on a diet, and you decided that today by lunch I need to drink 1 glass of water. So here's my 1 glass of water. I made a shahakol, I drank my 1 glass of water, I'm done. Then later you got something stuck in you. Well, no, I don't want to say that. Then later you got a funny taste in your mouth. You decide, you know what, I want another drink. So now you decided you can have another drink. That's a nimlach. You need to make a new bracha. The first bracha that you made didn't go on this. Says the Mechaber, same thing over here. It's very nice that hamotzi could cover all the foods, all the dvarim habar machmas seudah. But that's only the foods that you had a dream you were going to eat during the seudah. This gift that just came from Yankel Shmerel's house down the block, who never sent you a piece of cake in his life, there's no way that was covered by the hamotzi. So says the Mechaber. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Eis Katan Chaf, Shedarkon Lavai. The Mechaber said, this is true if these are even Dvarim Abar Machmas Seudah. Ritzon Lamar, V'gam Oichlon Apas. This is the Mishnah Berurah that I said is a big chiddush. Says the Mishnah Berurah, this is true even if you're going to eat it with the bread. The fellow down the block sent you a beautiful slice of roast, and you want to eat it together with the challah. It's still not covered by the hamotzi, says the Mishnah Berurah. Because it came from somebody else's house. You had 0 das on getting this piece of roast when you made your hamotzi. It's not covered by the hamotzi. Now the Aruch HaShulchan disagrees with this. The Aruch HaShulchan says if you eat it with the pas, it definitely is covered by the hamotzi. And Rabbi Say, this is where you could see the machlokes haposkim that I mentioned at the beginning of this year. At the beginning of this year, I told you there's a machlokes haposkim, how the mechanism of Iker and Tafel works. And here you see it. One way Iker and Tafel works is that the berachah that I make on the Iker covers the Tafel. The bracha that I make on the cereal component of the raisin bran, I make a mezainos on the cereal component of the raisin bran. That bracha mezainos covers the raisins. So did I eat the raisins without a bracha? Chas v'chalila. I made a mezainos on those raisins. How do you make a mezainos on a raisin? Because it's a tuffle to the mezainos. The other way you could look at Iker and Tafel is that, in this case, the tuffle doesn't need a bracha. It doesn't need a bracha. The raisin doesn't need a bracha. Why? Because it's bottle. It's a tuffle to the cereal component. It's like it's not here. It doesn't need a bracha. Here you could see that the Aruch HaShulchan holds one way and the Mishnah Berurah holds the other way. The Aruch HaShulchan says, if the guy down the block sent you 6 slices of minute roast, and you're going to take the piece of minute roast, you're going to put it on your challah, and you're going to eat it with the challah, then it doesn't need a bracha rishona, Siman Kuf Ayin Zayin Sif Hey, notwithstanding. Even though the Mechaber says that when food came from down the block and you had absolutely no expectation it was going to come and it wasn't here, it's not covered by the bracha, says the Aruch HaShulchan, if you're going to eat it with the challah, you don't need a bracha. You know why? Because the Aruch HaShulchan already told me earlier in the Siman that when you eat something together with the pas, it is exempt from a bracha because of the mechanics of Iker and Tafel. And the Aruch HaShulchan clearly holds that the mechanism of Iker and Tafel is that the Tafel doesn't need a bracha. So over here, the minute roast doesn't need a bracha. Why? Because you're eating it together with the pas, and you made a bracha on the pas. On the pas, you made hamotzi. Now the tuffle, the minute roast, is as if it's not here. It doesn't require a bracha. You are matvil it to the pas. You made it a tuffle to the pas. It's bottle. It's not here. It doesn't need a bracha. The Mishnah Berurah doesn't hold that way. The Mishnah Berurah holds, of course the minute roast needs a bracha. The mechanism whereby it would be potter is that if it's a tuffle to the pas, so the hamotzi covered the minute roast as well. But the hamotzi can't cover the minute roast if the minute roast wasn't here. So the Mishnah Berurah holds that it does need a bracha. And in this case, it can't have a bracha because it wasn't here and you had absolutely no das that it would come. So an interesting machlokes is the Mishnah Berurah and the Aruch HaShulchan. Okay. Now, let's close out the Siman with the Ramah. So the Mechaber told me over here, you washed, you made hamotzi, you got food from down the block that It was the furthest thing from your mind it was going to come. It's not covered by the hamotzi. This is the Geil Amaisa. I've seen this happen many times in, let's say, in bungalow colonies where people send around their cholent. Now, in that case, it might be that there's epis and expectation that it might come. The Mechaber is talking about where there's absolutely no expectation it's going to come. But in the end, the Ramah says, Hagah, v'loi ra'isi nizharim bazeh. I haven't seen that anybody is nizar in this halacha. The efshir, the time it could be, the reason is the stam das adam amacha bevian loy besuda, that the stam das of a person when he sits down and he makes a mitzi on a seudah is that it's going to cover whatever comes. And sometimes unexpected stuff comes too. So I have das even on that. My das is whatever lands on my table during the seudah is covered by the mitzi. Says the Mishnah Berurah in the final sif of this beautiful Siman, Eis Kat Chaf Aleph, Al Kol Ma, V'hainu Kisheviyu Lo Dvar Mabar Machmas HaSuda, V'chanal B'sif Aleph. But remember, even with this Ramah, the Hamoitzi can only cover Dvar Mabar Machmas HaSuda, like Basar, Dogim, Beitzim, Gvina, etc., etc. Di'iluhim Heviyu Lo Mine Perois, if they send you a beautiful Cortland apple, Lo Mahani Afilu Hayadaitil Lezeh B'shas Berkas Hamoitzi. The fact that you maybe had it in mind doesn't help. It's dvar mabar mishalom machmas seudah. It's not covered by a mitzi. Sheyuchel Allah lanachakach b'li berachah. El imkein malafis behen hapas. Okay, so the synopsis is going to have to wait for tomorrow's share. What a beautiful siman. I enjoyed it very much. I hope you did too. I hope it was very clear. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. This listen for limud HaTorah should be making against Klal Yisrael. The Rabbi Shem should send Yeshua's refuahs, parnasset, shidduchim, to all those in need. We should be zeicher to see the bias Goyal Tzedek, the Geula Shleima, with the bias Goyal Tzedek, the Meher of Yameinu. Amen. Be well.